Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Voices of Orion Project. I'm Nate, and I have the amazing Diane here with me.
Amazing.
Absolutely. And I also wanted to do a shameless plug. I'm not getting paid for this, but this is a Flowbee. Right in front of the camera. What you do is you hook it to a vacuum cleaner and you suck your hair up in it, and it actually cuts your hair pretty good. I bought it during the pandemic before they sold out. And so the next time we have a pandemic, which is probably right around the corner, you want to get yourself a Flowbee beforehand so you don't have a big shaggy head after a while. And also, too, you'll be able to get the same exact haircut. And I hate the conversations, and I hate sitting in a salon with all this nasty lighting because it shows all the blemishes in your face and then your hair gets all wet.
You're talking about my job there, you know that, right? Like, this thing's going to put me out of business, and you're actually plugging it. Good on you.
I'm sorry, but they probably don't sell them in Australia. But if you were cutting my hair, I wouldn't mind at all. But the last time I talked about aliens, I almost lost my ear and I got a bad haircut because the person slipped. So after that, I needed
I
Flowbee.
love the fact that you said it takes four times or four goes at it before it gives you a good haircut, which is pretty much like a normal hairdresser when you think about it.
Right. But that's strictly my fault because I didn't figure out how to do the layering. It was really simple, and I just had to figure it out. And then I had to learn how to cut from behind with a mirror. And that's the only hard part about this. It does the rest of your hair fine. It's just when you get to the back of your head and around the back of your ears, that's the issue. So anyway, we had a whole different itinerary for tonight. And we were going to do starseed children, actually starseed families. And I'm sorry, I got my camera in a different position tonight, so I'm going to be looking down a lot. So anyway, and I've also got a problem with my throat, so please excuse the constant throat clearing and the hacking and all the other disgusting sounds that I make tonight. I can't help it.
He's been trying to cough that frog up for the last half hour, but it hasn't worked, hasn't it?
No, I've been inhaling mold spores and cleaning out a basement, so it's really problematic, and I just couldn't get rid of this problem. So I've tried coffee and I've got tea, and I get a napkin now. That's the only solution. So anyway, we were going to do something on starseed families, and we were going to have Ryan, your son, here to share some pictures of orbs and so forth. And we're going to talk about healings as well, but we're going to save that for when Ryan comes back and can grace us with his appearance. So anyway, tonight we're going to talk about Egypt, and this is something we threw together at the last minute. And so we're going to talk about a little bit about our background in Egypt together, and then a bunch of other stuff and some things that most people don't recognize or realize about Egypt, as well as the other megalithic temple structures. So bear with us. We're a little bit mixed up tonight. So would you like to say something before we look at this first image?
Yeah, I think we should probably apologize to the person in the comments that we're not doing the all video, because he sounded really excited, and yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
It's not happening today.
Well, anyway.
And they're pretty good videos too. We have had a look at them, so they're pretty impressive.
Right. I'm going to be doing that soon. I don't know if we're going to do it in the podcast. I'm definitely going to do it in a video. There was a portal in a friend of mine's kitchen. Actually, it was in the pantry off the kitchen. And he didn't realize, he knew the house was haunted because he heard noises and it interacted with him. But it really didn't hit him until he set up a security camera on his porch after he enclosed it. And that's when it looked like a subway station for souls. And it started with his front door opening up. And they actually opened the door and they were knocking on the window. And they would actually get his attention. And then he would come out and walk out into the security camera area. And the orbs would be swarming around him. And at one point, he holds up sigils on flashcards. And the orbs start to swarm around him. And one of them actually flies up and down vertically and actually examines the sigils, because he was holding them right up to the night vision camera. So it's really some interesting footage. But we're going to get to that in some form or another soon. And but right now we got to talk about Egypt. So I'm going to put the image up right now. So what do you think, Diane? What do you see with this interesting image? First off, we don't know if it's authentic. We don't know the origin of it. It looks authentic, and it certainly makes sense. So it could be It could be something that that's a reproduction or something somebody did after the fact. But if it is, please let us know. Otherwise, we're going to analyze it right now. So would you like to go first?
Oh, I just yeah, same, because it was, as I said, on a telegram, and there was nothing with it. There was no explanation for it or anything, but it was just odd seeing something like that now and knowing what, because I mean, if I'd seen that, what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have gone, oh yeah, and not put it together. But now you can actually see the layers of hierarchy and control and manipulation. And it just, like I said to you, this really sort of brings it home, doesn't it? It really explains even that long ago. And I know you say it's longer, but it's right there. They haven't even tried to cover it up. And that was over how many thousand years ago?
Hard to say. Excuse me. It could go back. Well, Egypt, the whole area, from what I was told by my ET contacts, that it actually started about 100,000 years ago. So they say there's about 85% of the ruins that are still undiscovered under the sand, and they only have about 15% excavated. So it goes back a long time. And our past with it goes back, 18,000 years. So that hasn't been discovered either. That was the Sephogai pharaoh. And so, yeah, I had some phlegm in the back of my throat. It's Sephogai.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not going to even try and say that. I'll leave that to you.
The phlegm doesn't help. I was trying not to clear my throat when I said it. It didn't come out right. Don't inhale mold spores if you can help it.
No.
So anyway, taking a look at this picture.
Leave the frogs alone.
Yeah, they'll actually inhabit your throat after this. So I'm checking this out now. And what you can see, first thing that strikes me is you see two ET gods on either side. They have their arms stretched out and they have their hands locked. And that, to me, that shows dominion over everybody underneath of them. And then you have them holding puppet strings, and they're controlling two other types of nobility. And the people with the cone-shaped heads, if you look at the Paracas Skull Museum, they've done DNA studies on those skulls, and they're actually a different branch of humanity. Their elongated skulls are not a product of head binding. They're actually a product of genetics, and they have a 25% increased cranial capacity, and they don't have normal human suture lines. So these were the hybrids. Some people claim that these hybrids came from Antarctica. I don't have that information yet, but I can tell you this. They were hybrids that the ETs genetically engineered, and they were used as a type of social engineering or control mechanism within the social engineering program, or the hierarchy of the management of all the different human colonies or human civilizations on the planet. So they were, the nobility, and that's why people would emulate them by doing head binding with their children. And you can't get the increased cranial capacity, and you can't get the different or lack of suture lines if you do cranial head binding. So now you see those two people with the elongated skulls. They have their arms stretched out, their hands locked. That shows dominion over them. And then you can actually see puppet strings from the hybrids to what looks like a taller being on both sides, and you have two warring tribes. Now, the taller beings look like another possible group of ETs because they're taller than the indigenous population. Then you have two warring tribes going at each other. So this shows that there's a hierarchy of human manipulation within the planetary social engineering program, is how I see it. Now, if you're familiar with the Truman Cash books, which are, you have the Eye of Ra, which was the second book, and the first one is the Programming of the Planet. These are excellent books, and I'm going to put the links to these books in the video description so you can read these for free. They're in free PDF format. I highly recommend it because it's a wealth of information, and it's very accurate information. It ties directly into the information that I have and the experience that I've had with you, Diane. And you haven't read these books either, so you need to promise me that you're gonna, because I've tried, I've given them to you a couple times.
Actually, I just wanted to say too, when this picture, when I saw it, I actually realized that I think when you and I were back there living these lives and dealing with all this stuff, I think that was when we probably both were killed, because we were both fighting the elites, or we were standing up against the manipulation that was going on or something. But that really came sort of through as quite, quite a realistic thing. And I thought, yep, and here we are back trying to do it again. So just want to throw that out there.
You haven't told me that yet. So that's something, is that like are you getting some kind of residual emotional memory, or is it like an intuitive sense?
It was just when I saw the picture and I thought, like I said to you, if I'd seen this, 4 or 5 years ago, I just would have gone, oh, yeah, okay, it's an Egyptian picture. And, there wouldn't have been any real, I wouldn't have spent much time looking at it. I probably, because I do artwork, I probably would have looked at it and gone, that's a nice choice of colors. And I wonder why they've done that. So my perspective on looking at pictures and paintings is probably different to somebody else. So a scientist would look at it and go, okay, well, the hieroglyphics here, and we're going to explain all that. That's not me. I'll look at an entirety thing, but this just came through when I saw it, and I thought, yeah, and here we are back, doing it again. We're sort of yeah
hopefully nobody gets killed this time.
Hopefully.
But I wasn't told that, but they tell you things in stages. So if we were in fact killed for something, it's likely that I wouldn't have been told that at the time that all this started to come out. And we need to get to that point where they actually reveal it to us. All I know is we had a great relationship and everything was good. We were given to the temple. One of us was 8 and one of us was 9. I think you were 9 and I was 8. And when you exhibit psychic abilities in these ancient cultures, no matter where it was, wherever the ETs were active with these megalithic temple complexes, if you exhibited psychic abilities, the custom was to take you to the temple and say, my child is exhibiting psychic abilities and they're talking to gods or whatever. And that's when the ETs talk to the priesthood or whoever's in charge of the actual recruitment. And then they take you out of your parents' custody, because they just give you up. And then they put you into the temple, and then you're raised by the priesthood. And then it goes from there. And then, and then of course the pharaohs in Egypt, at least, and don't know if this was every pharaoh, but it's the common belief that they were descendants of the gods, or kind of like a in between half human, half god type person. Now, if you read the Truman Cash book, which I believe was the Eye of Ra, it was the Eye of Ra that gets into this. He was actually forcefully reincarnated. I believe he may have been captured because he was what you call a rogue soul. And in the extraterrestrial cultures, the rule is that you have to have a container body. You can't just leave your body and leave it behind and just let it fade away to where, you physically die. You have to be in that body. Now, you can astral project and you can do whatever you want, but you have to be connected to that. And that's the system. Well, it's an agreed upon system of social control, because it's very difficult to control somebody without a body. Even if you have all the advanced psychic abilities and you have all the technology, such as localized consciousness simulations and other types of abilities to where you can trap souls, which is also in the Truman Cash book. So I highly recommend you guys read those, because he talks about being a rogue soul. And there actually is a type of war that's going on where you have these people who don't want to be in a body, and they're ganging up and they're causing problems for the extraterrestrials who they used to be in their civilization with. So this is like a rebellion of people who don't want a body because they like the freedom that it gives them. There may be other reasons, such as mental illness. And that's certainly the way ETs look at crime. They look at it from not as a punishment standpoint, but there's a mental illness there that needs to be treated. And then that's how essentially how they actually rehabilitate people. Anyway, let's get back to this picture here, because you have the two warring factions. Now, in the Truman Cash book, The Eye of Ra, he was Ramses II. And this came through from what I remember from the book is probably some flashbacks, but it was past life regression mainly, stuff that he was doing, I think, with a therapist. And then he developed techniques where he was able to recover these memories. And in one particular case, and I don't remember specifically because we didn't have time to put this together. Otherwise, I would have scoured the book to get all the details. But he was ordered by Ra, because Amon-Ra was the god at the time. But what's interesting about Amon-Ra and during Ramses II is he was Pleiadian and not from Orion. And so that's something interesting. And anyway, Ra had ordered him as Ramses II to declare war with another nation. And Ra was depicted, the Eye of Ra, which was the winged sun disk, and that was the spacecraft. And it was referred to as the Eye of Ra because when he was on board, the floor would actually become transparent. And as they were hovering above, the pyramids and above the ground and so forth, it looked like you were just kind of just hanging in midair. And when this thing turned up on its side, it would glow and it would have, the corona discharge effect, which gives it the sun effect. But all the Egyptian people believed that Ra was watching them through this eye because he was. And so that's where that symbolism came from. Now the Aten sun disk doesn't have the wings, but it has the sun's rays. It's the same exact thing. It's the same program. It's just there's been variations of it depicted from you figure Aten, which was a monotheistic god, and you had Ra, which was part of the polytheistic Egyptian pantheon of gods, and that was the big problem for Akhenaten. Probably the reason why all of the iconography was destroyed after his short reign. But anyway, yeah, there's various ETs portraying these different god personas. So in one era, you could have Amon-Ra would be played by somebody who was a Pleiadian. And then in another period, you could have Amon-Ra from Orion or some other part of, the galaxy, or even a neighboring galaxy, depending on who's participating in the planetary social engineering program at that time. But anyway, let's get back to this picture. You see the warring tribes. So that's essentially the gods manipulating a hierarchy of people to filter on down to actually manipulate Egypt as well as other nations to fight one another. Then below that, you have an interesting thing. You have a long platform and a bunch of people underneath of it. So what do you think, Diane? What do you think that represents?
Maybe just, I don't know, the everyday folks, maybe the workers, maybe they're the ones that are supporting all this rubbish above. I think it's interesting too that you've got two different sides here. The fellow on the left looks like he's got a demon head or something, and the fellow on the left's got a white hat or a white sort of turban-y thing around his head. And I'm just wondering if that's representing good and evil. And same with the big guys at the top. And it's also, I always wonder all these, the way they put animal heads on these gods. Okay, right. I wonder if they are actual animal heads or if they are, some sort of mask or something. But anyway, and then again, you've got, and I remember reading something about, have you seen the crown part? Like the crowns are both so different. And also their thrones are both so different.
Yes, one's more ornate than the other. What I'm seeing is two reptilians, actually. You have an alligator person
and a snake
on the right, and you have a snake. And what that really depicts is two different factions of extraterrestrials manipulating the hybrid hierarchy, who's then manipulating, I guess, some other ETs that are acting as the generals or, directors of the, the warfare. And then you have two separate tribes dressed in different, they've got white shields and the others have like a brownish red. Yeah. And then you have the people below. And what this reminds me of the current conflict between NATO. Well, you have the soft conflict, you have the sanction-based conflict with NATO and Russia, and then you have the, the war over Ukraine. And that's basically the people that pay the price, and the ones that have to bear the brunt of all the suffering are the people below this platform in the picture. So if this is an authentic piece of artwork in Egypt, it's very telling of the actual situation there. Or if this is something that someone did after the fact, they certainly understood a lot more than most people do, because I'm looking at it and I'm seeing everything that I understand Egypt to be, as well as just the general state of humanity, because you have at the bottom, you've got a lot of different regular everyday people. You've got a bald guy with a lighter skin. You have people, I guess those are the Nubian people. I don't know, slightly different. I mean, but they're all bearing the weight of the entire bureaucracy above, which starts at the extraterrestrial hierarchy and filters its way down. So that's what I see.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, I think it's just amazing, but it's a pity that, as I said, we can't read the hieroglyphs, because that would probably be pretty telling as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and we'd also know that if it's just a piece of artwork that was done in the modern day and the person didn't know hieroglyphics, they wouldn't make sense. So that would give it away right away. But it does look authentic. And I think there's definitely some very clear symbolism there. Very, very obvious. And it's no different than what we're going through today. You have at the top, you have the ETs. They manage the spiritual prison we're in. Then you have below that, I like to equate this to a prison gang, and that would be the elites. And so the warden would be the extraterrestrials of the spiritual prison. You have the elites, which are the prison gang, and they're fighting over control and who has dominion over the rest of us. And then you have the regular everyday person who's in prison, and that would be the rest of the population. But yeah, this is very, very symbolic of the current human condition, because nothing has really changed. The only difference is they've allowed us to have technology and they've influenced it. Where back then, this was basically post-Atlantis. And according to what we know that's more accurate than legend, if you take a look at the Farsight Institute's remote viewing study on Atlantis, they were actually remote viewing ruins that were found on satellite pictures. And off the coast of right off the coast of Europe, I think they were actually looking very close to where the Straits of Gibraltar are. I think it was that. And anyway, what they found is about 70,000+ years ago, an advanced culture that was fully global had technology that they estimated to be 200 years more advanced than what we have today. And I had gotten some information on this from Ash. And what he said is that what they had seen in that remote viewing study, they saw crystalline power reactors, or actually power plants. What he said is that was a type of synthetic quartz crystal type of technology, and it uses the piezoelectric effect to produce electricity, to produce electrons. And what happened is that they weren't producing the power level that they wanted. They wanted more electricity. So they came up with an idea. Now, this is also the interesting thing here is what he said. He says is that the negative ETs, they've referred to them as the regressives, which are often portrayed by, they're often shown to be reptilians or other types of non-human races. And these are the scary ones that they appear scary to us because we're not used to looking at them. And they're the ones that play the negative side of this. And then you have the more human looking ones who play the benevolent, positive side. And then you have some neutral factions. And the way he has explained it, and the way it's always been explained to me, which is vastly different from other contactees, is that these three factions, which are the neutral, the negative, and the benevolent people, are actually part of a very vastly complicated, multifaceted planetary social engineering programs where the extraterrestrials break up in factions and essentially influence human society as well, because there's 1/3 of us are star seeds. So it's 2/3 humans, 2/3 human souls and 1/3 star seed souls. And we're in this planetary consciousness simulation. And when they take our psychic abilities away, they have to use religion and other forms of manipulation in order to steer us to avoid self-destruction, but they do allow us to destroy ourselves. And what he said is that the negative ETs were either subconsciously, and I think he said consciously and overtly influencing human culture at the time to do reckless experiments with technology so that we would destroy ourselves. So it would create a planetary reset, but this one would be different than the ones that they had staged before by altering the moon's orbit around the Earth, creating a geographical pole shift or flooding, or just sending the sending asteroids or comets and other things to impact the Earth to create these other mass extinction events, like they did, which we can find in the fossil record. So anyway, what he was saying is that, and this is in the Farsight remote viewing study, is that they use these very, very high-tech drilling machines, and they were drilling into the Earth's crust. I believe it was off the, I think they were actually drilling off the coast of New Zealand, which is the thinnest part of the Earth's crust. And it's also the largest source of underground lava. And it's all solidified and hardened now, but you can see a big scar there. And what they found is they were drilling down into the Earth's crust in order to create a massive geothermal power plant that was cooled by the ocean water. But what they miscalculated, because they didn't factor in the actual true amount of heat and pressure that they were going to encounter. So whatever they plugged this with to create this thermal electric reactor or geothermal reactor actually blew. And when it blew, the remote viewers saw a giant fireball, which they described as being the size of Australia. So you can imagine a fireball, Diane, as big as Australia with lava, and it's just raining lava all over the planet, which would then go up to space, it would freeze, solidify, and just hit the Earth as just like a shotgun blast, because it would be all these giant pieces of hardened lava hitting everything and massive tidal waves. And what they found is that the area that they remote viewed was the antipode of the explosion. So when the pressure went out to one side, the other side was pulled inward and it sunk and it went deep into the ocean. And what they estimated is there were several hundred extra miles of land from the most far western area, or the coastline of Europe as a whole, and that went into the ocean. And that's what they were actually finding remnants of in these satellite pictures, which started the remote viewing study and got him interested in that. And that was 70,000 plus years ago. And that's been accredited to the Lake Toba eruption in Indonesia. There's Lake Toba, and it's a relatively small volcano. It couldn't possibly have created such a massive extinction event, because the Human Genome Project determined that there was, at some point about 70 plus thousand years ago, that every major species that they tested came from actually 2,000 to 10,000 mated pairs. And that's because there was a massive extinction event and potentially a reseeding event as well. So it created this, it actually created genetic evidence of itself. And that was the most recent, to my knowledge, serious mass extinction event. And that is what has been accredited to the fall of Atlantis. So since then, what the ETs have done, they've set up these very strict type of series of religions using megalithic temple structures, such as, the pyramids and so forth, all over the world. There's pyramids everywhere. There's over 800 right now that are in China that we don't even know about, because the government has covered them up with dirt and planted trees on them in a no-go zone, and only farmers are allowed there. But that's how it was explained to me. It was since then they wanted to change our history to where they had a greater control over it. And now we're working out of that phase, and we're getting to go into a new phase where humanity is going to be set free from the spiritual prison. And that involves the star seeds. Absolutely. And that's a 700 or 800 year period that was described to me. And it starts by waking the star seeds up. A certain segment of the star seed population, which is 1/3 of the human race, is going to wake up, and we become the social influencers and social implants over time that will help humanity readjust. And as their intuition increases and their psychic abilities increase, they become more intuitive, more aware of the corruption around them. They're going to be staging events, which they already are, as the hidden hand, to kind of walk us through this process where they cleanse the planet of the corruption, which has actually been, created not just by them, but for the most part, because we can keep secrets from each other. We're not telepathic. Without telepathy, we can't govern ourselves. And that's why they have to have these religions and systems of control and this subconscious manipulation of the human race. And they've been staging historical events and kind of walking us through this, like they were instrumental with Hitler in World War II, because we need to have a measuring stick for evil. We need to have something to compare the current New World Order, or attempt a New World Order to. Hitler was the first attempt in the modern age, and we have to have that in order to compare it to. So what do you think? I think I've said a mouthful. I need to take a drink.
You did. You absolutely did. I don't know where to go with that one. You touched on before about Atlantis, and I just wanted to touch on that because for some reason I've had Lemuria in my head. And in our family, there are starseeds who I feel are connected to Atlantis. I mean, to the point where they're walking down the street and people actually come up to her and say, "Oh, are you from Atlantis?" You know? And I think, wow, okay, that's pretty full on. So there is lots of different things happening. And you talk about the awakening. I mean, the awakening was going to happen because we had the end of the Mayan calendar, which was 2012. And that was really when the proverbial crap hit the fan, because as much as they've been trying to push everything down, it's just coming to the surface, and it's becoming a reality, much to the disgust of our elites and the government controlling systems of the world, because they want to continue like what you're seeing here in this picture. They want to keep that going, because while they keep that going, then they've got some control. But and they're not going to be able to keep it up. It has to change. They can't be doing what they're doing. It's not working anymore. It's like our school system is outdated. They're not really teaching much at school either, are they? They're not giving the kids real skills. They're saying, oh, you need to do this, you have to go to university. No, you don't have to go to university to make something of yourself. That's absolute rubbish. But that's what they're pushing. So I don't know. I just think, and health system, what about our health system? How messed up is that, let alone the government system? That's pretty messed up too. So, yeah, I think we need to give it a bit of an overhaul, and we need to make it a little bit more realistic to what's now. I mean, they've given us, like you say, they've given us all this technology. They've thrown all this information at us. And now it's like, oh, sorry, oops. Now we need to maybe roll it back a bit and make them a bit dumber again because, I think they're getting a bit too smart. Well, it's going to happen.
Well, if you read their white papers, what they're really going to do is they want to merge with machines, and they want to depopulate and get us down, according to the Georgia Guidestones. They want to reduce the world's population down to less than 500 million in balance with nature, as they claim. Well, the truth is that the earth is made for us. We're not made for it. Or you know what I'm saying? It says that this world is made for us. It was terraformed. Some say it was created by God. The way it was explained to me is that the solar system has been terraformed, and there's not even a term for this. Solar system terraforming, I guess, is probably the closest thing you're going to come to it, until they recognize that it has been done, and they'll give it a proper name. But it's been terraformed 9 different times. 9 comes up a lot because there's a council of 9, which kind of rule over this whole project of humanity. And so 9 is kind of a repetitive number in numerology in certain religions. Probably all of them.
And it's an end number too, isn't it? 9. It's like it's the final number, or it's a reaching of perfection, or whatever, or reaching of the end of a cycle and that sort of stuff. That's what the 9. But the 369 is very significant too, because, well, even Tesla was right onto that one. I mean, look what that man created. Nikola Tesla is just an absolute, he's a whiz. Mm-hmm. He's more than a whiz. He's got to have been some sort of, you talk about social implants. Well, there's one right there, I reckon. Yeah. But look at the influence he's actually made on all of us. And I mean, we can thank him for these things. I don't know if we can thank him or not, but we can, he's been responsible for these. He's been responsible for so much stuff. And there's so much stuff out there that's being hidden. So
absolutely.
It's time it was brought out.
I think
we're old enough now, guys. You need to bring out the real stuff. Stop playing with the toys. Bring out the real stuff and tell us what we've been missing. Just do the right thing.
Yeah, what I was going to say is I heard, I haven't confirmed this, but it was could have been Ancient Aliens that I saw this on, that somebody had asked Nikola Tesla, where do you get your ideas? How do you come up with them? And he said they just come in flashes. So if anybody who's had psychic contact with ETs or anything like that, you'll know that these types of events are a type of telepathic communication. They can send you images, they can send you full concepts, And plus, you can also tap into the collective subconscious, which if they allow you to do that, and then they do things to guide what you're getting, you're going to have someone like Nikola Tesla that comes up with these ideas and puts them into, makes them reality. So yeah, for sure, he was one of those people. Now, there's also plenty of intelligent regular people that are also guided as well, because this is kind of a joint effort. You can't just use starseeds to socially engineer the human population. You have to use regular human souls as well, because somebody has to do it. Somebody has to carry on this whole thing after we're all gone. So it's sort of a combination of things, but there has been a lot of starseeds that have been instrumental in a lot of different, particular movements. And we can get into that in the future. I'm going to compile a list of people in history that were in fact starseeds, and one of them, unfortunately, was Adolf Hitler, and that was a Draco starseed. That's a whole different subject for another podcast, which will be interesting when we get to that. So, anyway, too, and also with the Great Awakening, what they want to do to stop that is quite obvious. Is they want digital telepathy. They want to tie us into a cellular brain interface. And that is a serious threat, because if they can manage to do that and get people to do it, because next year in 2023, the Neuralink human trials begin, and fools are lining up to get this technology, this experimental technology, implanted into their brain so they can interface with a cell phone. And now the cell phone will be in your head. So I don't know if you can surf the internet on your eyelids or if you see it in your mind or what, but unfortunately, we're going to find out. And I predict that it's going to be less than a savory experience for some of these people. And the overall effect is a detrimental effect on society, because the elites are trying to mimic what we already innately have in us, which is natural telepathy. There's nothing to do with our DNA. It's everything
why
to
not
do with
just use that? Why not utilize that? They know that it's there. Why are they doing it? Because they can't control normal telepathy between normal human beings.
Exactly. And that's really
the problem. That's
under control by the ETs, but they want to stop us before we reach that point, because it's a war. Yeah, it's a losing proposition for them. They're not going to be successful, because the warden of the prison has said there's going to be no more gangs after a while. We're going to end the prison. Everybody's going to be set free.
Well, I couldn't think of anything worse than being permanently connected to the internet. I could see some pluses if you were wanting to control a population or a situation. Yes, definitely. Like there would be no crime. That would be one positive aspect of it. But the fact of
you have thought crimes.
Yeah. I mean, if you go to bed and you can't, like, I have enough trouble trying to switch my brain off, let alone having the bloody internet to deal with as well. I don't know. I'd go crazy, I think.
Well, they want to monitor thought. I've actually got a video of Klaus Schwab. I have a video of Klaus Schwab speaking in French to a French reporter. And he's talking about putting the cell phone into the brain and how they can monitor people. It's a system of control. I'm going to be doing a video about that soon. And I apologize for my last video where I strung a bunch of news clips together. I just figured out how to adjust the volume, and I needed these headphones because I'm using a laptop speaker. So next time it'll be much, much better. You'll be able to hear everything, and parts of it won't blow your ears off. So I'm getting slowly better at the whole, video editing process. It's a lot to learn, and it's hard to do it because I have to do videos. So I'm all on my own with that. If you're
really techno dumb like me, you haven't got a hope in hell.
Plus, her and I are too far away to actually be able to do anything. So it's really difficult to get together. And it's like, hey, you can do this, and this is how you do that. Anyway, let's get to this other picture. Sorry about that. I'm still dealing with this problem.
Frog, get rid of that frog.
I'm ready to set him go. Mate. I need to find a swamp. I need to go to DC and let him go in the swamp. Let's see.
Oh, yeah, that'll work. Oh, that'd be interesting. Hey, you go and have a PCR test and it comes back as frog DNA.
Right. Let's see, someplace.
Explain that one. Hey, this one's gone amphibious.
All right, apologize here. I'll have this image up in a moment. And then we're going to talk about that. Are you seeing the image yet on your cell phone, Diane?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm putting it up right now for everybody to see. And this is obviously Akhenaten, and I guess that's Nefertiti. And there's less to talk about here, but really what we're looking at is we're looking at the ET hybrids again. And you can see the elongated skulls, and you can see the sun disk of Aten above the two shining down on them. And that was the monotheistic religion under Aten that Akhenaten put into effect. And that wasn't his choice. That was actually the extraterrestrials. This was a different period. And they were going from polytheistic to monotheistic and then back again. So what do you think, Diane? Plus you can see the pot belly. You can see the strange masculine and feminine characteristics of these hybrid ETs. Well, they're actually more like hybrid humans, but we're all ETs, really. I mean, you can't really differentiate because, I mean, for example, when they analyzed these skulls and they got the DNA from it, they do not know what ET DNA looks like. So it's pretty much just, genetic information, but they were capable of reproducing with regular people, and they found other genetics. So King Tut is reportedly less of a hybrid. So it's possible that, I guess, Nefertiti maybe wasn't a full-fledged hybrid herself, or maybe she isn't King Tut's actual mother. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm always interested in the fact that they've got these huge, when they're doing statues and stuff, they're making these huge beings as opposed to the north. And then you sort of look at the size of the temples in Egypt, and some of them are massive, and you wonder if there weren't giants around at that stage. You know what I mean? Like, it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? Yeah,
there absolutely was. And I want to click out of that right now so we can get back and now we can talk about it. So anyway, yeah. There was larger people back then. How I understand this is, now this is also something you can check out with the Farsight Institute's remote viewing work. They remote viewed a super Earth that was destroyed that became part of our asteroid belt. And they've actually found the core of this planet, or core of another planet. I'm not sure if it's the same one, that they plan on mining. They run these scientific articles where they show this giant asteroid that's worth this bazillion dollars because it has all these rare minerals and metals and stuff in it. But that's actually a core of a planet, or a piece of it, a piece of the, not the exact core, but a piece of the core, maybe part of the, like the exterior of it, something, either the core or just on the outside of it. But that was a super Earth, and there was giants on that planet, giant reptoids and giant human looking ETs. And there was a cosmic war that took place. Some people refer to it as the Orion Wars, but it was a war between reptilian factions and what we call the Galactic Federation. It started someplace else, but it spilled over into this solar system, and it resulted in the big stain that's on the front of Iapetus, which is a moon of Saturn. That's that moon that has that seam that goes around it. It looks like two pieces fused together, almost like a walnut shell. And there was a type of resort there for extraterrestrials, and that's probably where the Council of Nine were meeting. But you could see from the windows of this resort, you could look at the rings of Saturn, which is the planetary simulation reflector dish. And you have the actual technology within the atmosphere that creates that six-sided hexagonal shaped storm at the North Pole, which is directly in the center of the rings. And that's the broadcasting center, from what I was told. Now, other people have other, beliefs or opinions on this, but that's where the frequency comes from that drowns out the source consciousness and limits us to the five senses. And then other technology is employed that it interfaces with that, involving etheric implants, which is how they can make some of it psychic, while the rest of the population isn't. And they can create this entire ruse on humanity that keeps everybody tied into this augmented reality that makes all these things possible, like these, the pyramids and so forth. And by the way, just so people know, the reason why there's pyramids and megalithic temple structures on Mars is because there was a planetary simulation on that planet that was strictly starseed based. There wasn't a fledgling race project involved with it. That's been remote viewed. They have the face is a big structure that is really heavily eroded. And at certain points in time, when they fly over with a probe, they can actually see the shape of the face. And of course, they obfuscated it in later pictures. So I think it was the Viking mission that took the good pictures of it. And they essentially just, completely discounted it. But it's there with the pyramids. I mean, there's pyramids all around. They were much, much bigger. They were talking about pyramids. It could be as tall as 20,000 feet, because on Mars, you don't weigh as much. So it's easier to build structures that are bigger. But the people on Mars would have been more like the Akhenaten character, more of a thin kind of physiology, not a lot of musculature, thin and very tall. But it's interesting because the way it was explained to me is that there's really small planets with really, really small people on them, or ETs. And then you have big, giant super Earths that have giant beings up to 50 feet tall or more. And then you have kind of the in-between. And for example, the Hajayan race is 7'9". It's pretty uniform due to genetic engineering. And their planet is closer to the size of Venus. It's in between Mars and Earth in size. And that's a combination of the size of the planet and the pull of the actual planet, which depends on the size. The larger the planet, the more gravity. The smaller the planet, the lesser the gravity. But then you have genetic engineering that factors in. So there's a variation there. So you may not have people of the same height on the same size planet. Is what I'm saying. It's not always a direct correlation there because of genetic engineering. If the race wants to be bigger or shorter, for example, then they can do that within certain parameters according to the gravity of the planet, the atmosphere, and so forth. Anyway, what do you think? I said another mouthful.
Anyway, what do you think? I like that. Well, I don't know. As I said, I don't have that connection that you've got. So I'm sort of just going to stick with being a human being. So I don't know.
You're still amazing. I can tell you that with absolute certainty and conviction.
Definitely amazing.
Anyway,
it would be nice to know. It'd be nice to see the whole picture at the end of the day, and I do think it will be revealed to us. I think it'll get to a point where our ascension or our awakening will just get to it'll just come to us. At the end of the day, it'll be like, right, we can't hold the truth back any longer, so here it is. And I'm waiting for that day, because that's when things will be revealed. And I think all of us have something to learn yet. I don't think everything's as cut and dried as what even the information you've been given. I'm not sure if that's 100% correct yet either. And I mean, it's true for you because you're connected, but again, we've got different sort of connections. So I guess that time will tell that. I'm not ruling anything out. I love hearing about other races. And I remember when I was in my 20s, I was so into UFO stuff and I was reading so much information back then. And I distinctly remember reading an article that was new about the Pleiadians. And I just immediately thought, yeah, that's it. I'm Pleiadian, because I just so resonate with that. That just feels so right. And, whether that's true or not, I don't know. I look at my son and I look at my niece, and I know they're connected. I just know it. I just feel it. How they're connected, I haven't got to that part yet. As I said, she sort of is more on the Atlantean side, but I keep getting told Lemuria. So I can't really find much information about Lemuria. Do you know anything about Lemuria, or is it the planet of is it Mu or whatever it is? Do you know anything about that?
Not really. I've looked at the Atlantis stuff a little bit, and I always had the intuitive feeling that it wasn't just a strange looking artificial type of island structure where there was a civilization that was actually a global civilization. It only made sense. And I could see how the legend of it was more of a theological type of construct, or it was just more mythical. It didn't seem to be realistic to me. So there was that part of it. That's the reasoning side of it. But there was the intuitive sense that it was a global civilization. And I don't have any personal information on that other than what I've done through research. And then I've compared the research Well, I've actually taken the research conclusions and asked questions about that. So I did get some information about it, that what the Farsight Institute was seeing was accurate. And that was what the Atlantis myths are actually from. And then I was told how that after that, there was a serious clampdown on human development. And that's why they created these pyramid structures, because if you can hijack a civilization and get them to assist in the construction of a pyramid, you can occupy them for a very long time and then portray yourself as gods and create religions and then kind of get us into what we've got now, because Christianity is loosely based on a lot of different religions, and all of the religions seem to be like a stepping stone to the next. And that's why it's very easy for atheists to point fingers and say, well, there was all these other messiahs and there was all these different similarities between Horus and Jesus, for example. It's because this is a long-running program, and these concepts or themes have been repeated in different ways, and just over and over again. It's mainly to control human social development. And you could say, well, it's also to suppress it as well. And of course, that's
absolutely
part of a process.
All the information, have we?
Right.
No, we haven't, because we haven't been given all the information. And you talk about religions being set up to control people, and they definitely have. I mean, they've no less than admitted that. But I think we're missing the point in the sense that, okay, whether it was Jesus, Muhammad, Horus, whoever, it was a spiritual connection that we were meant to pick up on, and we never picked up on that because it was taken from us. So even when they wrote the scriptures down, if you want to look at the Bible, for example, they haven't actually given us all the information. They've taken out the important parts and they've given us the parts that they can use to control us with. And if you look at some of the stuff in the Bible, it's a lot more spiritual than anybody gives it credit for. There's so much more in that book, I tell you what, than people really give credit to. And the thing is, it's not just one book, it's several books. And again, how many are missing from the Bible? 30, 40? Someone told me 60 something the other day, and I just went, really? And I thought, wow, well, if that's the case, and there's one, I know there was one called the Book of Mary.
I think it's more than that.
Book,
yeah.
Well, it probably is.
There was 300 supposedly.
Mary. Well, there you go. See, so how much information are we missing that we should be getting just there? It's probably all in all of those books, and it's been taken away because, oh no, if we give them that information, they'll be able to figure it out for themselves. They'll be able to heal themselves. They'll be able to do whatever. So, and there was the Book of Mary that was taken out completely because that was all about women's spirituality and this connection to God and all that sort of stuff. So that's just been, oh, well, we don't need that. We'll just take that out.
Yeah.
No, we need the whole lot. We need all of the information, and we'll get it. It'll all come through, I believe. It'll come together.
Well, you're only going to get so far with ancient scriptures or ancient scrolls and stuff like that, because you're only going to get to the level of understanding that the people had back then. You're going to get a wider field of view because what's been completely covered up historically by the Vatican and the Roman Empire, because they destroyed a lot of the information. And the Council of Nicaea, when I understand, met around 300 AD. Because I know the Quran came out around 600 AD, and that was loosely based on a lot of the other stuff. But yeah, it was so 300 AD. And then there was roughly 300. Well, when the Council of Nicaea met, they had over at least 300 books, from what I understand. And then they went through that. And what they did is they selected things that were the less similar that it was to the other pagan religions that they were replacing with Christianity, the more chance it had of being part of the Bible, because they were creating a state religions. They were consolidating all of these pagan religions under one kind of umbrella or one roof. And then they were using the Vatican very much like the NSA is used today, because that's where the confession booth came. So when you're on your cell phone, you're talking to your friends, the NSA is listening, and they're spying on you. And just like when you go to the confession booth, that was the way of the Roman Empire to pay attention to what's going on with their citizens. And really, the Vatican was reportedly the one controlling the Roman Empire because it was a theocracy. And of course, that's when you have incredible levels of corruption. And they also took out the book of the Apocrypha, think I said that right. That was actually too pagan. There was so many pagan themes going on there that they had to get that out. And for a long period of time after they put the Bible together, common people weren't allowed to read it. Those who could read, because a lot of people were illiterate at the time. So it was left up to the priesthood to dictate or to explain, not to dictate, but to explain what the Bible meant, what it said, and so forth. So it was a system of control, and it still is today to some degree. I mean,
oh, definitely. But that's what I'm trying to say. And also, like reading the Bible and understanding it now, it was never meant to be understood way back when it was written. There's a lot of stuff in there that really only makes sense to us now, you know, looking at what's happening in the world. And I mean, holy crap, it's all in there. So yeah, there's got to be quite a lot of truth in it. Is it all true? I don't know about that one. But there is a lot in there that is true. So, and again, it's back to using your intuition, isn't it? So if you're reading something,
yeah, that's a good point.
You have to really like pick up on what's, you know, what feels right and what doesn't feel right, because we're in an age of misinformation. We're being deliberately confused. Because this is how they're slowing the awakening process down, because they know that we're onto them. We're onto them.
Oh yeah,
a lot
absolutely.
of us are onto them.
Right, and what the ET presence is also doing, and I was having an email conversation with a member of Project Avalon. I'm going to be talking to tomorrow. It's not part of a podcast, but he actually brought up because he had saw you and I, and he watched the podcast, and we started to communicate. Was that they're bringing people together that have worked in the past together to help this awakening. And that's what he did with us. And there's other people that are actually forming little, you know, either like a couple or a small group. And this is where I get into subconscious psychic programming and networking, where they give you subconscious programming, where they tell your higher self that this is what you're going to do. And your higher self will influence you, the layer, or with the avatar self, to actually do something. And then they bring people together through the networking aspect of that. That's when two or more people come together for a special purpose. And when you're dealing with the ET presence that plays all sides, just like the financial oligarchy, that could be a positive purpose or a negative purpose, or even just a neutral purpose.
Well, I think there's going to be more and more positive getting together for positive things. As I said, when I saw that picture, and I told you about, it wasn't until after and it came through that, yeah, you guys tried to do this, you know, however many thousand years ago, and you probably got mutilated for it. But
I hope that
it's interesting. Well, I think it probably did. I think, well, didn't you say Elizabeth April when you did that interview, and she told you that you took that box that you were, remember?
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah.
I just heard some feedback, so hopefully it's not going to be too bad. That's why you need to get your headphones. I don't know if that
I can't hear anything. Go on.
Anyway, yeah, what happened is when this was before we got together, is that I was told, and this was after the Rex Bear thing, which I'm going to be doing some videos about that finally. After contacting Rex Bear, which it didn't go anyplace, I was subconsciously urged to do this. And I also wanted to do it too, because she had been on the show and she had answered a question about me to him. She wasn't given all the information. There's a lot more to it, which I have to explain in a future video. But I went on her show, actually not a show, it was a psychic group chat. I think she was calling it something like that. I don't know if she's still doing it. But it was like up to 8 or 10 people would pay $55, and you got 2 questions that you could ask her, and she would connect usually with either the collective consciousness, or she would connect to your ETs if you're a star seed, and then they would give her information. So she connected to my Andromedan guide Heelbead, is how it was explained to me, and I had these 2 questions. One was about Egypt, and the other one was about this project, and I got like a couple of videos out about that. One where I talk about some of my stuff with Egypt. I show the Elizabeth April clip, and then I have the whole hour and a half chat is on Rumble, and then I've got a short version of it on YouTube as well. But anyway, I had stole a black box, and the way this worked is that when they quarried the rock, they were using programmed life forms. And this is in the Farsight Institute remote viewing material. There's a free video on YouTube by the Farsight Institute. It's about the construction of I believe it's the Great Pyramid. And so they get into that. But what I was told is that the programmed life forms, just like they said, just like they saw, were actually the ones quarrying the rock out using technology. And then it was transported using these towers, these levitation towers. And this is all AI controlled. And it also interfaces with people's consciousness, such as the ETs who control the AI remotely just by their consciousness. Now, these towers would levitate these stones. So if you're looking at it from an aerial view, you would see just a line of stones coming, just levitating across the ground to the build site. Once they reached the build site, that's where I came into the picture. And I was, at that time, when I was a slave, I was in my early 40s, which is about the end of your life for most people. Most people are dead long before that. I think even with us being in the Egyptian priesthood, we didn't even live that long. I think I was told into our 30s. That may have been because somebody killed us. I don't know, but yeah, I was like 41 or 42 years of age, I think is what I was told. I don't remember specifically, but that's usually the end. If you haven't injured yourself or gotten an infection or died of something, something's going to get you. So anyway, I guess I felt like I didn't have anything to lose, and I wanted to steal a levitation device and I wanted to get this and smuggle it out to give it to the villagers, and so they could use it to build things. Because we were hijacked, and they weren't using this technology to improve the lives of the Egyptians, just the ones that are working in the temples, and just the pharaoh and so forth. It was just those people surrounding their structures. Outside of that, it was business as usual, under kind of a tyrannical ET rule, which is what that image that we first looked at depicts. So anyway, it was a black box, and this would levitate over the stones. Now, or actually the cut blocks. So what they would do is when they would quarry these stones and they would cut them into the blocks, they'd put this black box levitation device over top of each block, and then it would be controlled by the tower system. The tower would levitate, actually the black box levitated, but the tower would actually control the levitation device. Once they got to the build site, I would hold this little controller gun in my hand. Now, I didn't point it at the stone, or actually at the block to get it to move. Just by holding it in my hand, it interfaced with my consciousness. So then I could move multiple blocks as they came into the build site, and I could move these blocks at will to go where I needed them to go. And that's where the other slaves would come in, and they would gather around. A couple of people would gather around a block using the palms of their hands and their fingertips, and they would guide the stone into the correct position where it had to go on the pyramid. We were building at that point the Menkaure pyramid, which is about 50,000 years old. So it didn't have anything to do with Menkaure. It had to do with another pharaoh completely. And it really had to do with a reproduction of the three stars in Orion. It's a model of it on the ground. You have the Queen's pyramids were the first model. They wanted a much bigger one, and they built it from left to right. That's why when you look at the Menkaure pyramid, it looks much older than the other two. But Egyptologists say that it isn't, but it actually is. That was the first one that was built. You can see it has more erosion. They stripped the stones away in later years to build parts of Cairo. So that's why, plus there was an earthquake and a lot of the casing stones came off. Now these pyramids were rebuilt and restored multiple times, and I'm going to get back to that as we finish this out. But anyway, yeah, so it was first the Menkaure pyramid, then the pyramid in the very center, then the final pyramid on the very end. They were built from left to right. And that's how that was done. And it was done through high technology and levitation technology with the assistance of Egyptian slaves, which weren't always Egyptian. I mean, this goes back about 100,000 years. So only in the latter days did they refer to themselves as Egyptian. So you had a lot of different periods that took place. And there's, I believe it's called a cartouche. I could be wrong about that. I didn't get a chance to do all of my research on it, but there was supposedly a plaque between the paws of the Sphinx And I got some ancient aliens, but I know that to be historically accurate, I just haven't done my homework on it because we didn't have a lot of time tonight. But and that's not your fault. It's just the way things go. But
No, it's thrown in the deep end. That's all right. Sometimes that's the best discussions anyway.
yeah, it makes it spontaneous. Anyway, there was a pharaoh he wasn't a pharaoh yet. He was actually a prince. And his father was the pharaoh. And he was camping out between the paws of the Sphinx. And he read this cartouche, if that's the right term. And he had this vision. The ETs communicated with him, and they said, if you excavate the Sphinx out and you dig it out from the sand, we'll make you the pharaoh and you'll rule over Egypt. And of course, the gods will return as well. And that's what happened. So that was the beginning of another era. What had happened is over a long period of time, and this also involves not just Egypt, but it involves the pyramid structures around the world. What the ETs would do is they would have an active period where the pyramids were active and they were interacting directly with the population. And then there would be a period of time where they would do a kind of changing of the guard, and they would stage, and this was a staged extraterrestrial conflict. And you could say, well, if they're having a war that's staged and they're blowing each other up, aren't they killing each other? Well, the truth is that they're using essentially an avatar of themselves. So it's like the movie Avatar, where the person gets into a pod and they control another physical container body, like the what do they call those? I forget. Do you remember what the name of the Avatar ETs were in that particular movie? I forget, but it's not exactly like that, but they have soul transference technology. So they put your body into a kind of a stasis tank, or it's a vertical cylinder, and it's filled full of fluid, and they use technology to keep it going. And that's another subject for another video. But then that person's consciousness is then put into another container body, and then that container body is used to fight this war. So if you have multiple spacecraft blowing each other up over top of Egypt, right before they get blown up, they exit their body and they don't feel any pain. So they can stage these wars and blow each other up, and nobody really gets hurt in a sense. But unfortunately, the population does. So if you look at the biblical story of Moses, which has been remote viewed by the Farsight Institute, they had actually released engineered plagues, just like the U.S. federal government, the Chinese government does, and so forth. They had their own Wuhan type thing going on, and so what they did was they would release the plagues, and then they had all sorts of other things, crop failures and so forth, locust, but so that happened very close to the way it was described in the Bible, according to the remote viewing study. Now, what I was told is that there wasn't just one Exodus, there was multiple Exoduses, and all across the world this would take place. They would build these megalithic temple structures up and then change the entire situation. They'd upset the social order, stage a extraterrestrial war using a theological facade or theological, it was more or less ET stagecraft. And then the population would take a major hit and they'd be blown to hell. I mean, they'd have plagues, they die from that, they die from crop failures, they die from the warfare. And you can see evidence, and I've got some stuff written down here. Abu Rawash is a blown up pyramid, and this is much older. And this goes back a long time. This is actually probably, and I'd have to get more information on this because I didn't get all of it from Ash tonight. He was in a meeting. So I'd only talked to him briefly before we actually started this. But that's likely predates the pyramids, the main three that I was just referring to earlier. And that was blown up in one of these extraterrestrial staged type of war events. And then you also have the colossi of Memnon, which are two statues that show vitrification. And that was an earlier, actually, no, the pyramid that was destroyed that I just referred to goes back much, much further. But in more recent times, there was another staged conflict, and that's where the colossi of Memnon, you can see that those statues have vitrification on it, and a lot of chunks are actually missing. Some of it's vandalism, but a lot of it is initially from the actual ET warfare that took place, which caused the vitrification. Now, there's another area that they refer to as it says,
actually.
yeah, and there's another temple that's referred to as having melted steps, but that's in dispute. I watched a video earlier about that. They say it's just kind of erosion or just some people walking up the stairs, but there's this residue buildup that looks like the stone melted. Don't know exactly what that is. No one can really explain it. They have various different hypotheses, but nothing really seems to add up. It needs to be remote viewed. It's probably some sort of ET staged event, maybe a conflict where some sort of energy weapon was used. It's quite possible. It could be just something that naturally happened, but because you can see erosion from walking on the steps, they just start to, in the center, everybody walks, it just starts to wear down, and it starts to create a dip, but it doesn't have a flow where it looks like melted stone. And they were talking about maybe it was like stalactite or stalagmite type of activity with calcium carbonate, but the ceiling doesn't show any type of leakage that would cause such a thing. So where did the liquid come from? Was it geopolymer? We don't know, because no one's able to actually get, they're not allowed to test it. You have to go through a pretty hefty, a very, very difficult permit process to do something like that. And the Egyptian government, for the most part, doesn't want it done.
And there's just for some reason that came into my head too. I watched a documentary, and I can't remember the lady's name, but it was fantastic. And there's all these granite, or like they're just these, they look like huge big bowls, or
yeah, I've seen those.
Did you see that? And they're just all put out of town because they really can't like put a name to it, or know what it's been used for. So they've just actually pushed them all to the outside of town and said, oh, well, we can't fit this in anywhere, so we're just not going to acknowledge it. But these things are so perfectly formed, just incredible. Like the craftsmanship is incredible, if it actually is, or if it's something else, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know why that came into my head just then, but it did.
They had some sort of possibly a ceremonial purpose, maybe some other utilitarian purpose, but they were machined.
Yeah.
Everything, the technology that was used is very, very high tech. And just like it is in any one of these types of complexes, India has some fascinating temples where the entire temple is a musical instrument. They've got these temples that are built into the rock. You find those also in Jordan and throughout the Middle East. And also in Ethiopia, you have the church. They have these 8 churches, I think it is, and they actually dig into the bedrock. You also see that in India too, where they've removed all of this massive amount of rock, and they've made these freestanding churches. They're actually built out of a solid piece of rock, and they're part of the bedrock, and they're 2 and 3 stories.
Yeah.
And their sculptures.
How do they do that? But then they've actually said, when they've talked to the population there, that they've actually admitted that they've had help from out there.
Yeah.
So and that's all been pretty well documented now. So yeah, it's very interesting. And just I'm sitting here looking at you with your pyramid behind you there, and I keep looking at it the way it is now, all dilapidated, but I keep seeing it the way it was, which is completely, like, perfectly flat, straight, perfectly white.
Absolutely amazing.
Got this gold top on it, and I think, they were magnificent when they were, in their heyday.
Yeah, and you've got to see more than I have, and I do have one particular memory that I recovered really briefly. It was in meditation because I'd asked to get it, and what I saw was it was a nighttime view of the Great Pyramid, and there was a long stone pathway. I can't tell distance in here because you're out in the desert, and I have to actually go to Egypt physically and stand there and actually figure out how long it was. But it was a stone pathway. Above me were 2 large palm trees that were arched. So they had actually trained these trees to create an arch. And the vision, or the memory, was so clear that I could count the palm fronds. I could sense the energy coming from the pyramid. Yes. And I could feel the arid night air. It was one of the periods in Egypt where it was very dry. But the Great Pyramid was brand new looking, and at nighttime it glowed with energy, like a gold color. It looked like solid gold. It looks like that Iron Maiden Power Slave album cover but there wasn't like electrical discharges and lightning coming from it. It was just an even glow. It was an even glow. It was actually self-luminous upon the night sky. It was a pitch black night sky. There were no stars from my vantage point because obviously the pyramid would probably drown out the stars, but it was pitch black and it may have been cloudy, but it was just this incredible glow. It was like this glowing gold giant pyramid above the palm trees. And I'm looking up at it. It was incredible. And I felt the energy, and the energy that comes off of these pyramids is mood altering. And it just fills you with a sense of awe and importance, and you feel good. It's it's
electrical, isn't it? I mean, it wasn't it hasn't got something to do with electricity, because even when they went up, they took what do you call it? To read electrical current and stuff, and they went right up the top there. And the higher that they got up the pyramid, the more intense this electrical reading was. So
actually, what they found and they did this in the some of the European pyramids, is when I think they sent a drone up, and they were able to detect the further you got away from the top of the pyramid, the more intense the energy is, which is completely opposite of what we understand to be what should happen, what should be happening. The further you get away from the pyramid, if it's generating energy, the less energy you should have. It should dissipate, but it actually increased in intensity. And you were talking about a capstone. Well, these pyramids were interfaced with technology to create these mind-altering effects, and they sit on ley line intersections, which is a conduits of geomagnetic energy, and it harnesses that using a variety of different ways that we don't fully understand or just barely understand. We think it has something to do with possibly water. There's a pyramid in India that, there's a pyramid in India from what I remember, and I saw it on Ancient Aliens, and it actually had piping. This is extremely ancient, and it was almost looked like a pyramidal mountain, but it had actual pipes that were coming from the pyramid, and there was a pond or a lake next to it, right next to it, where the pipes were coming up through the through the bedrock, or through the rock, and they were metallic pipes. And so there was a variety of, it's kind of like going to Space Mountain. It's sort of like a resort. The ETs literally create this incredible monument, but it does things. It has mind-altering effects. And Farsight, when they remote viewed it, they didn't bring up the mind-altering effects with the Great Pyramid remote viewing study, but they talked about at night that when the pyramid was active, they could create Tesla coil-like light shows in the sky from the electrical discharge. Now, what's interesting too is they remote viewed the Eye of the Sahara, and I'm glad that I remembered this, because just before they published, or actually it was before they published it, I was a member of Farsight Prime, and I was asking Deceivi about it, and she had, I don't know if I think she sent me a telepathic picture, but it was a bit restricted at the time. What I got was more of a psychic impression, and I saw the center of the Eye of the Sahara was this massive pyramid, and I didn't see it clear enough to give me the confidence to post in their forum, because they ran a trailer for it, I think it was, and I posted in the forum what they were seeing. I said it was a pyramid complex right in their forum, and under the I think it was the video trailer, and but I left out the most important part. There was a big pyramid in the center, and that's exactly what they saw. And this pyramid apparently had like steam or some kind of emission coming from it, and it had lights and weird stuff. It was pretty elaborate. So the Eye of the Sahara was another massive pyramid complex, probably more spectacular than what we see in Egypt, because it was a bigger pyramid in the center and many other pyramids surrounding it and other types of megalithic structures. And people think this is Atlantis because it's a spiral, but what it is, it's it's a point where everything was blown up. And I was told that at that point, what they did is they had a second exodus, or not a second, there was multiple, but there was an exodus event that took place there. So people who are living in that area where the Eye of Sahara is, which is very close to the same latitude as the is as the stuff in Egypt. It's the northern part of the African continent, but it's on the western side of it, and that's where the Eye of the Sahara is. So they had stuff they were building all across there in other parts of the world. And what they saw is that the ETs wanted to upset the social order and end what was going on there. So they came in and a spacecraft flew over, and the ET was inside, and it was an ET human. And he thought they were able to get his thoughts and what he was thinking. And he's like, okay, this has to be destroyed. We got to get rid of it. So he blew the whole damn thing up, and it created, I think it's a 25-mile wide spiral that's like carved into the bedrock. And there's very little information on as far as pictures of it, what it looks like on the ground, because it's very remote. But I did see a video on YouTube where this person was transported out there, went through all this trouble to get out there and walk through like an area of it. And it looked just like Mars, because there was big pieces of rock just laying everywhere. And it looked just like what we see on Mars, because Mars had the shit blown out of it during this particular war, like Valles Marineris, and which is that giant canyon there, and that has no actual aquifers, no sources of hydrology coming in, like the Grand Canyon has the Colorado River. This has nothing. And the Thunderbolt project, which is tied in with the electric universe theory, did lab experiments, and what they were able to do is recreate Valles Marineris and Olympus Mons and other surface features of Mars as being electrical discharge scarring. And that was using Thunderbolt weapons. That was the reptilians had, and all, they all have the same technology because they access the collective consciousness. So when anybody says different ETs have different levels of technology, it's only because they're being mentored or controlled by another group, and they're not giving them the technology. Just like what's going to happen here eventually. Eventually we're going to have access to the technology once the financial oligarchy is out of the picture and things are stabilized on this planet. We're going to start getting that technology, but we're not going to have all the good stuff. We're going to have just what they need to give us, and we have to demonstrate that we can use it responsibly. But in this case, these were scars on the surface of Mars from this ancient war. And that's why you have the largest canyon in the entire solar system is Valles Marineris. And if you look at it, it looks like an electrical discharge scar, because you can compare the two, and they actually were able to recreate the soil and do the experiments and recreate literally everything that you find in the JPL images and the stuff from the European Space Agency. So it's pretty interesting. Now they have a theory that another planet came into the vicinity of Mars, and it got close enough to create these electrical discharges and cause these scars. And so they have that theory. It's like a rogue planet theory, but according to the remote viewing information, according to what I was told, it's actually ET related. So what do you think? It's a lot we don't know, and a lot that we still have to find out.
A lot we don't know, definitely. And for some reason, I just went back to the little black box that you were talking about, and you know how you said that you touched it and you interfaced with it.
Well, no, that was the controller.
Oh, the controller, sorry. Yeah. But I mean, you were interfacing with the whole thing, and that's how you're making it work. And I was just remembering an interview I watched with Bob Lazar, and he was talking about the UFOs and stuff that were in the hangar and that, and he said he went up, he couldn't help himself. He said, I had to go up and touch it, and as soon as I touched it, I got into trouble. It was like, don't touch that. And that's also because of supposed to be the technology that they've got. So when you touch it, because it's like a biological thing, it actually connects with you, and then you connect with it, and that's actually how you make it fly. And, we laugh at all this stuff, or we used to laugh at it all and think, this is just too out there to be, and none of it can be true. But, I remember I bought my son a science magazine. This is probably going back when he was about 6, so it would have been 10 years ago. And in that, there was all this information about the new technology that was out and how they could make this skin type layer that would go over as a covering for these aircraft, and it would mimic the background behind it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's actually, I know, but it's just fascinating. And you just don't think that we have this technology, but it's there. We're just not being, it's just not being shared. It's there, but it's not being shared.
Right.
And I mean, I was listening to his interview with Joe Rogan when I was on the mower, because that's what I do, you know, put the earphones in and listen to something and off you go. And that story is very interesting too, you know, what he went through, and how he said he's really disappointed that he came forth, because he really misses working on these machines. He said that the technology is just so, you know, fantastic. And because he wanted everybody to know about it, and he got out there and talked about it, and of course he got rubbish. He went through all sorts of things, thought he was going to get killed. And I think they sort of just stepped back and thought, oh, we'll see how this plays out, because this could be quite funny. But it's probably, he said it's been the worst thing he's done. He's sorry that he actually said anything.
They completely ruined his life.
It did, but you know, it just, it's the information's there. It's like the Tesla coils, you know, they can actually make power come from the earth. And there's actually a Telegram channel there called, it's Michael Tellinger, and he does stuff on, what's he call it? I think it's called One Small Town or something. And he says, if you get enough people together, you can actually make a whole new community. And it's based on, you know, probably more of a real existence than what we're doing here in this one, where, you know, people, they've set up the Tesla coils. So they've got their power, you know, supplied and paid for. And I think, anyway, you'd have to look into that. That's something, you know, that's quite involved. But I just wanted to say that it's interesting that the technology's been there behind us in the wings for probably thousands of years. It's been taken away from us and controlled, and, you know, we've just been given little bits. But now I think it's just got to the point where, yeah, you know, I think we've grown up now. I think we can handle a lot of this stuff. I mean, maybe not all of us can, but I think a lot of people can. And I think they need to start, you know, putting it out there.
Yeah, we're all slaves, you know, to the financial cartels, because we owe debt, which is essentially they create wealth out of thin air. They create our money out of thin air, and they make us fight over it and suffer over it. And we're always in debt to them. And we're also slaves to the carbon-based energy system, which keeps them in control. It suppresses, you know, human social development, because then they can sell this story that that there's too many people, and that it's all the technologies we have are unsustainable, and wind and solar is the last frontier, and that's all we have. So you're going to have to get rid of people before that works. So that's the big lie. And they've had these technologies and they've shelved them, and they've got stuff that have been invented, things that have been invented by regular people who wound up mysteriously dying, committing suicide, or just having their patents federal gag ordered to where they can't use them.
Or they've become very wealthy and they're living out in the scrub somewhere, and they, because they got paid off. Yeah.
Saudi Arabia comes in and purchases the whole patent, or some other entity comes in and takes it and says, okay. And the skeptics, when they go looking into it, some of this stuff's a fraud and some of it isn't. I'll tell you
an interesting little thing that happened. Far out. How long ago was that? I was working, it's before Ryan, so probably would have been about 20 something years ago. And I distinctly remember it because I was looking to invest in it. And it was about these two men in Cairns who had developed this power setup where they could actually pull power out of the ground. So they admitted it was Tesla technology that they were using.
Yeah.
And they could literally charge up these batteries without any help from anybody. Now, they were so excited because they'd done all the research, they'd made it all happen, they put it all together, and they were very, very vocal about making this a public company, and they wanted the public to have access to it, the public to be able to buy it. And look, it was in the papers, all that sort of stuff, and they were online. Now, they set up, this was probably over a few months, they set up the website, they had everything up and running, and then suddenly it just there's nothing, and you can't information on it anymore. I'm so sorry that I didn't keep the newspaper clippings and all that sort of stuff, because I just thought, what happened to that? I wanted to invest in that because they were looking for investors. So they put the ad up and they were telling people about it, and this is what they had, and then it just died. Now, whether it was it didn't come together, but honestly, they literally just disappeared off the face of the earth. I don't know what happened to them.
That's the pattern with all of this stuff. Sometimes it's a fraud and they disappear because it wasn't true. And other times they disappear for other reasons because it was really legitimate. And someone came in and purchased it, or there was a federal gag order issued. It doesn't matter what country you're in. They have to protect the petrodollar. That's the US dollar. It's the only.
I can't hear you, Nate.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
I don't know what's happened there.
How about now?
Yay.
Okay, hopefully it is.
My internet connection is unstable. I'm getting a message again. Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah, I got
the
computer
joys of
problems.
living out in the middle of nowhere. Sorry, continue.
Something you got to deal with. I don't know where exactly was I? I kind of got sidetracked there.
And I don't know. You started to reply to me, and you just disappeared.
Okay, so you didn't even hear it. Anyway, everybody else did. And I kind of got sidetracked, but I was just basically talking about how they put the government confiscates the energy patents, and there's several thousand of these. And I think back in 1992, I'm not 100% certain, this is stuff I read 20 years ago, that there was a congressional hearing and a committee about this. And they said that we're not going to open these patents up because it's a matter of national security. Oh, I don't remember what I was saying. They have to prop up the petrodollar. We have to, in order for and this is Henry Kissinger's idea, which was what we went off the gold standard. And then we have this, currency that's not supported by anything tangible. So the US dollar, because the country's basically bankrupt, in order for us to have valuable currency, we force everybody else in the world to trade oil in US dollars. So if you come out with a technology that can replace oil, it has to be phased out. Well, first of all, it has to be the financial oligarchy has to agree to it until we get rid of them. But you can't have it you can't have it because of this system. And that's because of the way our money is set up, the way it's valued, because as long as countries trade oil in US dollars, our dollar has value. It's the world's reserve currency. So we're tied into this horrific system. And to get out of it, it's going to take a long time, because we didn't get into it in a very short amount of time. It took a long time. It took a lot of illegal and semi-legal acts and very immoral acts by the banking cartel that got us to the place we're at right now. And, the Federal Reserve and the European bankers they're all in cahoots together. And that's the situation. I think we're kind of close to running out of time. Do you have any idea how long we've been at this? We're amateurs, by the way.
Yep, and nearly an hour and a half, and so much for you saying we wouldn't be able to have enough to talk about.
Yeah, I think we could keep going, but I think we need to save it for another one. But what I wanted to talk about real quick before we go is that we're going to be getting into another subject that's somewhat connected, or very connected to this subject here, which is megalithic temple structures. We're going to be talking about something that nobody talks about in the UFO ET research community, which is called, it's a phrase that I've coined. It's a term that I've coined, and it's referred to as virtual temple complexes. And what this is what the extraterrestrials have done for the Planetary social engineering program at this phase of it, because we have the internet and we have social media, which is much more powerful than building a pyramid and building a temple and influencing a relatively small, isolated population such as Egypt, or any place in ancient times where they had these huge structures. Social media allows them to socially engineer large amounts of people across the planet and influence us as a whole. So what they've done, and I'm going to be talking about this in detail, this may go through 2 different shows, I'm not sure, but virtual temple complexes come in different forms. You can have an internet, cult, for example. It could be an Enki cult. That's something I was involved in, which we're going to talk about. And or you could have just something to do with New Age religion. angel magic. There's a wide variety of different types of online cults that are being used as virtual temple complexes, where instead of what people perceive as, spiritual beings, or, the pagan gods, for example, are actually extraterrestrials masquerading with a theological facade and actually running social experiments and a variety of different programs to create anything from social implants to social influencers and actual people to do and carry out different tasks that are actually stirring the pot here on the planet and actually creating different scenarios. So it's going to be a very interesting topic. And it's definitely something that I've tried to approach a lot of researchers with. And I've gotten absolutely no response, from Linda Moulton Howe to Carrie Cassidy to a wide variety of other people, including everybody that I could find any contact information from the Ancient Alien show. So Giorgio Tsoukalos, you think, would jump at something like this, but in fact, getting a hold of him, you have to go through people in Hollywood now because he's not reachable. And even if he was reachable, it's unlikely that he'd take it seriously unless he saw a podcast like this. And even then, it's difficult to say because a lot of these people are controlled by people in Hollywood, and they're controlled by the Central Intelligence Agency. And it just isn't considered to be acceptable in mainstream ufology right now to talk about what's really going on currently. It's usually what went on in the past, or some old rehashing of the Rendlesham Forest incident, or Roswell, or some other, UFO crash. And there's multiple ones out there, but we only hear about the same ones over and over again. And, so for example, Rendlesham Forest will be repeated over and over again, but you're not going to hear about what's really going on now. And that's why we need to have the Voices of Ryan Project website, where we can actually create a grassroots disclosure project and create a body of work that shows that this is happening to a lot of us, and to frame it in such a way where people understand what's happening to everyone, that we're all waking up and they're making contact with us. And there's a complete design behind it and a very good purpose behind it. So anyway, that's what I had to say. Would you like to say something at the end of this?
No, I've had a complete blank, but that's okay. There was something I was going to say, but I can't remember what it was now. Sounds about right, me.
That's okay. Well, you had the brain fart this time. I had it last time. So if I keep going,
No,
I'm going to
I
have
had it last time too. I had it last time too. You can't take all the credit. No, that was definitely me as well. I'm just going to blame my menopausal brain.
Oh, I stopped mid-sentence and couldn't remember what I was going with it. And then when my sound went out, then we had that little issue there. So anyway, we're going to wrap this up. And thank you guys for tuning in. And we should have another podcast out next week. Hopefully everything will go well, and it'll be on the virtual temple complex subject. And we've got lots of good stuff after that, including how ET abductions are done. We're going to talk about timeline consciousness simulations, the planetary simulation, of a wide variety of consciousness related simulations and how they're used, and just about everything else. So thank you for tuning in, and you guys have a great one, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
See you next time.